Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar relating to diagnosing your business health. Hello and welcome. This is a joint production of the University of Vermont's Office of Engagement, the UVM Continuing and Distance Education Division, and OpEx 90. Over the course of today's webinar, we'll be taking a whole systems approach to business operations assessment. I am Chris Kaliba, professor in the Community Development and Applied Economics Department at UVM, and I'm also the inaugural director of the UVM Office of Engagement. Having been at UVM for over 20 years, I've grown to recognize the tremendous social capital of our state and long to position UVM as a better partner with businesses, nonprofits, and government agencies. With the establishment of the Office of Engagement this summer, UVM is working to provide a consistent and supportive presence within and across the talented and effective ecosystem of business services and economic development technical assistance providers across the state of Vermont. The mission of the new office is to serve as a front door to Vermont's research university, harnessing our teaching, research, and outreach capacities to serve the needs of all Vermonters. We seek to incubate partnerships between the university and our partners in a collective effort to promote the economic resiliency of our communities and businesses, to introduce our students to the organizations and people that make this a special place to live and work, and to better align UVM's offerings in the workforce to the workforce development needs of our state. You'll have an opportunity at the end of this to earn a digital badge for your participation today from UVM Continuing Education. My colleague Greg Dunkling from this unit will share that information and further opportunities to take courses with us in December and onward. This seminar was developed out of our efforts to better learn how UVM can support the resiliency and recovery of Vermont during as well as in the aftermath of our current pandemic crisis. And I'm pleased to introduce our webinar leader today, Dan Feliciano. Dan approached us several months ago wanting to partner to offer Vermont businesses and nonprofits with opportunities around business diagnostics. And we were very, very excited to be approached by him and collaborate with him. Dan is a GE certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and is versatile and skilled in strategy and transformation consultancies with over 25 years of experience in this space of integrating business acquisitions, leading and driving large-scale business transformations, implementing Lean Six Sigma, and turning around public and private sector businesses. He has broad and deep experience in finance, healthcare, operations management, and technology. He's recognized expert in teaching, coaching, and mentoring clients in strategy, finance management, and operations. He's also in Net Promoter Score, as well as the Lean Six Sigma development execution space. As you'll see, Dan is very detail-oriented. He's self-motivated, results-oriented, and high-performing in this space, well-respected across the state, and excelling the direction of cross-functional teams while overseeing innovative strategy development, financial performance, operations performance, and strategic execution. Known for developing and maintaining positive, trusting relationships with all levels of individuals with from diverse backgrounds. And that's certainly been reflective in our work with Dan in setting this opportunity up. In working with Dan and Greg Dunkling, I know that he's deeply committed to supporting Vermont businesses and help these organizations thrive. And we want to thank Dan for the support here. The Office of Engagement at UVM is pleased to offer this webinar free of charge. It's part of our ongoing mission to serve Vermont and Vermont communities. Just a word about logistics before handing it over to Dan. Dan, after a presentation of 30 to 40 minutes, Dan will lead us through an interactive group discussion. During this portion of group discussion, you'll have a chance to turn on your cameras and microphones to interact with each other. We do recommend that you use headsets and earbuds, as that usually provides the best sound and reduces background noise. And then we'll be offering you some tips for turning on and off your camera as necessary. As Dan is speaking and during the discussion, if you've got questions to pose, we're probably all very familiar now with online chat boxes. In this particular platform, you can find that in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And as we go, please feel free to pose your questions to Dan and to the group as we go along, and we will be fielding those responses. And just to remind you, though, that there will be chances for you to ask questions and respond and comment using unmuting yourself at the appropriate time. So without further ado, I think I will hand it off to Dan Feliciano to lead us through a discussion of cash conversion cycles and the business diagnostic tool. Dan.
I appreciate that intro. My mother would be proud. But first I want to explain how I came across Chris, and I hear Chris on the radio, WDEV, talking about his new role, and I got so excited. I said, I need to talk to Chris about this thing I had for about a year and a half about helping Vermont small businesses, and for the most part, most of our businesses in Vermont can be considered small, how they can better diagnose their business. And I'm going to back up and I'm going to tell you the story how we got here. About a year and a half ago, I decided to take a look at buying a business here in the state of Vermont. Stay home with my family. Small and large businesses transform themselves working with private equity firms. Private equity firms are those companies that buy small firms and try to make improvements. And as I was driving around the state looking at businesses, I noticed many of the businesses didn't have their financial records in order, weren't really in the position to be acquired. These were great, successful businesses, but on paper, they really were struggling. You have to keep in mind, 40% of businesses, especially small businesses, make a profit. 30% are actually losing money. So I drove around the state. I went to all these different organizations and events, and I'm trying to figure out, what are we doing as a state to help our businesses survive, grow, and take their businesses to the next level. And I was looking for integrated solutions. You know, we have a lot of great marketing firms here, we have operations firms, we have great accountants and great bookkeepers, but what do we have for the small business owner, the entrepreneur, especially the aging entrepreneur business, to sell, or a business to give to their kids, or a business to pass? Couldn't find anything. You know, every agency, including state agencies I went and spoke to, had bits and pieces of it that you could actually look at, nothing that was holistic. So I went on this tour across the state, not only looking to buy small businesses, and there was a bunch of them, but also to figure out how can we put a plan together to really help the businesses in the areas they need and apply an appropriate diagnostic, right? I have a cousin, he's a doctor at Stanford Medical Center, and he always said, choose your doctor and you'll choose your illness. What that means to me and how I interpret that is, if you talk to a marketing person, they're going to say you need marketing. If you speak to an operations person, they're going to say you need operations. If you speak to a bookkeeper, they're going to say you need bookkeeping. But how can you step back holistically, right? Swallow that pride, get rid of the ego, and figure out where my business really needs the most help. And I didn't see anywhere where we had that platform available to us where we're looking at the businesses and we could sit back and do a do-it-yourself assessment to say, here are the gaps and weaknesses. that I potentially have in my business, and this is how we should move forward. And that's where this germinated, this idea of how do we get together and provide businesses a low-cost opportunity to really understand what they need to do. Because the small business owners in the state of Vermont can't afford to hire the big consultants and come in and do this work for us. And that's when I approached Chris. I got all excited. I approached Chris and Greg Dunklin, and I said, hey, what do you think we can do, forget anyone else, to help small businesses? Can we do a seminar? Can we have follow-up seminars? Because small businesses are the number one employer in the state of Vermont, and I'm going to talk to some slides about on that issue in particular. Before we get into the actual discussion here, note that there's a couple files in the file window. On your screen, there's a file window that you can download. One of them is a worksheet. I encourage you, shame on me, I was supposed to get this out earlier, and you should have gotten it in the mail, but I didn't get it out. But I encourage you to download it and take a look at it and scribble your notes on it. So as you're thinking about your business or your organization, take those notes, and it's to help you develop an action plan to go forward. And then there's also this business awareness a template that I put out there for us to share. And it's just general questions about your business that you should be able to answer, but maybe you don't, right? So here, we're not passing judgment. We know that many business owners are busy, and we know that, COVID has, created havoc on our business climate. So let's just take a deep breath and get into this conversation and see what we actually can do. Chris gave me that great. My mother would be proud. I'm just going to bypass that, and I'm just going to make the one highlight. I've worked in many industries: healthcare, manufacturing, service industries, IT, financial services. The things we're presenting today, that I'm presenting to you today, might sound manufacturing based, because we have a lot of manufacturing examples here, but they're applicable to every type of business. So I encourage you to use the chat window if you're in a service type in business and you're not quite following along. Put it in the chat window, ask the question, and I'll get to you because I can probably answer that question. I've worked with some of the largest financial services organizations in the country. I've worked with small companies across Vermont, a lot of them pro bono, and as I just said, across many industries. So I'm confident that we can make this applicable to you, right? Oftentimes we go to a presentation and we say, that's not directly applicable to me. I'll make this applicable to you. And as we're going through the presentation, we're going to go into these different breakouts of the cash conversion cycle, which I think is critical to follow along. And then we'll have more time to answer those questions in deeper thought. Here are some very interesting statistics. As I was traveling around the state, I was getting data from various organizations to understand what we have. And the SBA was up here about a year and a half ago from DC, and that's the Small Business Administration. And when I was at a meeting that was poorly tended, by the way, I got this handout with statistics about Vermont small businesses, and I thought it would be interesting to take a look at these statistics. This was last updated at the beginning of the year, right before COVID hit. I'm sure some of these statistics have changed, but I think it's interesting to note, right, that 61% roughly of the workforce, and this is the last statistic we had, it looks a couple years old, was employed by the private sector industry, right? So that's not state government. That is 61% of the workforce is employed by small businesses. I'm going to use a small business, anyone that makes less than $500 million a year in revenue, which is the vast majority of the businesses across the state of Vermont, right? Firms with fewer than 20 employees, when you look at that, have the largest share of the small business groups. So these really small organizations, fewer than 20 people, are the vast majority of Vermont businesses. And then here's an interesting statistic, and this is right before I said that COVID hit, is 25% of the small, during the last 12 rolling month period, and this would be April 2012, you can see that employment had decreased. So this is when I got really concerned when I was going across the state. COVID hadn't hit yet. I'm looking at these businesses. I'm going to the Vermont Employee Owners Co-op, which is trying to help employees buy business. And I'm looking at these numbers, and I'm like, holy cow. And I'm looking at these small businesses. They don't have the cash flow to stay in business, and their operational performance is poor. It got to the point that I had probably looked at over 100 businesses. I got so concerned about the state of small business in Vermont that I wrote a handful of legislators saying, here's what the SBA says, and here is actually what I'm seeing across the industry. So those are just some key statistics for you to have in your back pocket. I think it's very interesting as you think about the workforce, what you're doing in the workforce, what opportunities exist in the business climate and workforce to have a look at. Now, if we look at small businesses as a whole, and as I indicated, the vast majority of our businesses, you can see that 73% of them are male-owned, 25% about are female-owned, right? I would venture to say it's even gotten worse now during COVID. I don't mean worse in the sense of the differential, because we had so many businesses affected by this COVID and stay at home. You hear about the gender inequality in the businesses and people who are employed. Women have bared the brunt of this COVID situation and have given up their businesses or scaled down their businesses to stay home with their children. But look at the statistics down here as you start looking at the demographics of the business. And in Vermont, it's probably even more dire. Look, 35% of the businesses are owned by someone between 50 and 59 years old. Another 18% greater than 60 years, or roughly. So when you start looking at the statistics, roughly half of our businesses are owned by people greater than 50 and approaching that age where they're thinking about retiring and potentially selling their businesses, or trying to understand, what do I do with that next business? How do I transition? What's that succession planning actually look like? Do you have any questions on these statistics? I thought it was important to bring up. You can just drop them in the chat window if you will. And I wanted to add a couple more business statistics to this, right? So we talk about why businesses often fail. And that's when I've been brought in. Businesses are failing, so what do I do? So, people always want to know, what do I do, or how can I actually improve that business? So the thing to be cognizant of is 29% of businesses run out of cash. And that's the number one reason for failure associated with it. They have a product that doesn't have a market. There's cost issues associated with it. But it's not only the small businesses that are seeing this cash crunch, right? It's the fast-growing businesses as well. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen is businesses that are scaling up too quickly. Those same businesses, the vast majority of business failures of businesses that are scaling too quickly is that they run out of cash as well. So you're going to hear a common theme here. As we're talking about the business diagnostic, I'm going to talk about how to diagnose your business. And this is a very high-level diagnostic, right? Typically, it would take, I would be on site for 2 weeks. We're looking at every part of your business, doing a diagnostic and making recommendations. What I'm doing here is providing a template for you to think about your business so that you can be prepared to say, here are things I need to do first. But the interesting thing is we need to manage our costs, especially now. The challenging thing about doing business in Vermont was, to begin with, was if you're a manufacturer, is getting product in and out of Vermont. Even before COVID struck, there was a trucking crisis where we didn't have enough people to make deliveries and come in and out of the state. That happened nationally. It's not unique to Vermont. So getting raw materials and getting goods and product in and out of Vermont was very tricky, which affected production. So that'll be another theme we have, because we're making product here. A lot of the raw materials are being brought in. A lot of the raw materials are being taken out of the state as well. I'm going to make some assumptions here, right? Some assumptions is that your business is stressed. Your business can be stressed several ways. One of them, it could be the lockdown has had an impact on your revenues and your profitability. That's going to create some stress in your business. Another thing could happen is where you've seen massive growth in your business. Remember I said when you're growing too quickly or scaling up, you have the potential of running out of cash and understanding what improvements need to be made. So this isn't just for businesses that have seen a slowdown in their revenues and in their profitabilities or a complete shutdown. There are businesses that are experiencing severe growth that are going to face some of these same challenges, and they're going to manifest themselves in cash flow issues. Your business may experience some cash flow issues, as I just said. You may need some sort of injection of cash. We know there was PPP funds. We know there was CARE funds that were given, that businesses applied for and are using to keep your doors open, to keep employees engaged. The tax implications of that, I'm not sure what those are. I'm not a tax expert, but there's going to be tax implications on top of that. So it's going to put even more pressure come tax time on your cash flow. Your planning may not be optimal. What I've seen and the comments I've heard recently is people have gotten the PPP money and some of the CARES money, and they went out without doing a complete diagnostic of their business and started making improvements to their business or using that funds to do what they thought was the right thing. I'm going to share with you a bunch of examples I've heard in the last month and a half, 2 months from Vermont businesses and national businesses about some of the unintended ramifications of the improvements they put in place or where they might spend their money. We had a lot of people developing web pages. We had people focusing on operations. We had people cleaning up their books. There was all sorts of ways to spend money, but I'm going to talk to you and give you examples that should resonate with you about some of the unintended consequences. Your planning horizon has changed significantly. Your planning horizon will probably be more daily. How do I survive this week or the next 2 weeks, right? Governor Scott just indicated that we have another clamp down or shut down of business to contain this COVID virus. I've been watching the news diligently out in Britain, and Europe, that is, and it seems like we're going to be following their model, right? We have a new President-elect Biden, very concerned about the COVID, more aggressive about handling the COVID, and even discussing openly, he's not shy about it, a further lockdown or clampdown on the country to get the virus under control.
So this is Chris Kaliba here from UVM. It does look like we may have lost Dan. Checking in with Nicole. Nicole, do we know from CDE what Dan's link is doing?
Hi, Chris
and team.
Wanted to just, he's back. There we go.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for those patience. Chris, thanks for jumping in, and
Yep.
welcome back.
Yep. So we need to start thinking about the nearer term actions, about what actions we can take. I can tell you that I had an epiphany working out in California with two medical device manufacturers. And there was a common theme I heard across the state of Vermont. We have high taxes, we're not business friendly, utilities are expensive. Well, we're here, and those are things we need to deal with. And when I was out in California, every thought I had was shattered, about the cost of doing business and the ability to make profits. San Diego was a booming place, and the cost of living there and the cost of doing business there is significantly higher. And I'm confident as Vermonters, if they can make money there and have thriving and growing businesses, we can do the same thing here. This isn't a long-term strategic plan. This business diagnostic I'm talking about that we're going to be doing is going to be hitting on some of the key elements of your business and how to get to objectively look at those areas of your business and think about, if I make an improvement there, how will it help my bottom line? Would it put strain on other parts of my organization? We're not talking about Lean and Six Sigma strategy there, right? This will be my Jerry Maguire moment. I'll tell you the good and bad about Lean and Six Sigma if we want to as we get into that. And this isn't, of course, legal and financial advice, right? Put that disclaimer out there. As you're thinking about your business, there's an approach that you could actually take, right? And this is your typical approach. We're going to develop a solid strategy. We need to figure out how to stabilize our business, standardize it, scale it, and the succession planning. When I talk about stabilizing a business, that's where we're beginning today. Right now, if we think about ourselves, let's think about ourselves as being in the ER. Even if you have a business that's wildly growing, I guarantee you're going to probably have some cash flow issues down the line. A stabilized business means that it's merely a predictable. We may not like the results, but it's a predictable environment, but it has wild swings in it. I'll give you some, as we're going through this, you'll see some techniques on how to stabilize that business. When I talk about standardizing a business, and we're not going to discuss it in detail here today, I'm talking about making sure your business is repeatable. You can, the results are day in, you're reducing, it's more predictable, it's satisfying your customers' requirements, and that you could go on vacation. Imagine, being able to take a month off and your business runs without you. That's a standardized business. When I talk about scaling a business and where you actually would like to be someday, I'm sure, we're talking about a business that as you take on extra customers and clients, that your costs don't go up at the same rate, that your profit margin will increase, and your business can grow without a lot of extra money, predictably, and add to the bottom line so you can do better things for your employees, like offer more benefits potentially, vacation, time paid off, but your business is able to grow without growing your cost side of the business. That's a tricky part to get to. And then, of course, how do you sustain that growth, and how do you plan for succession? As we look at this, you're going to hear me talking about a theme of how do we improve cash flow, how do we reduce costs, how do we increase our capacity, and then how do we improve a sustainable profitability. That's a model that I recommended. So, as I said, I've worked with companies all around the U.S., all around the world, that were either getting looked at to be purchased by a private equity group or that were distressed. And all these phases applied to them. And this is what I was looking for in Vermont. I was trying to find out who can provide this holistic view and help businesses get through this actual phasing and have a pragmatic plan that's practical. Oftentimes, the plans we put in place aren't very practical, so this, I tend to think, is a more practical plan. Right now, again, though, we're focusing on the diagnostic part of the business, not on how to stabilize, standardize, and scale. We can have a separate conversation on that and a different PowerPoint. I'm not going to talk about what methods of improving cash flow, reducing costs right now. We're simply going to talk about how to diagnose that business. However, if you are interested in steps that you could take, if you feel your business is really distressed and you're really anxious about it, contact me. I put on a webinar back in March on immediate steps small businesses need to take to survive COVID. And it addressed many of these issues about cash flow, reducing costs, and capacity, that the assumption is you're distressed. What can I do right now to get through this? It was well received, and people all across the country actually have used that, and you still might find some benefit in it. So feel free to contact me if you have a lot of angst around your business. That PowerPoint will give you a do-it-yourself or get started on yourself technique to move forward. And again, we're trying to do things here, and when Chris, Greg, and I got together, how do we make this low cost or do it yourself so that Vermont businesses can grow? Because we know you can't afford to hire expensive, crazy consultants. The other thing I heard quite frequently is that, people have invoicing and cash and profits and confusing the two, right? There's a difference between cash and profit, right? Profit's the difference between your total revenue and your expenses, right? Cash is the money that you have readily available today. Remember, an invoice isn't cash. As I was going across the state looking at businesses, I saw all these invoices out there. Oh, yeah, we have all these invoices. We're looking good. An invoice is nothing but a promise to pay, and it doesn't guarantee you're going to get payment, right? Cash flow also, when you start looking at cash flow, it helps you understand, can I really understand my business, and how do I use that cash on hand to pay my bills, to pay my taxes, to pay my employees, right? And profitability doesn't guarantee you're going to be liquid. So these are things we have to keep in mind. I saw too many business owners not watching their cash flow, not understanding where their cash flows are, right? And cash is king. We really need to know how long we can survive on it. Just think about the new restrictions we put in place in the state of Vermont on COVID. We're shutting down smaller venues. The commingling of people has been reduced. What is that going to do to your business, and how do we plan appropriately for that so we know what we can do? The cash conversion cycle, we're going to look at that slide here and the slides in a second, but what it does, it measures the amount of time it takes you to get paid. So for instance, we have sales, we're producing a product or service. Some of us might have an inventory, right? A small inventory of raw materials or goods. If you're in the service industry, like a consulting business, your inventory is going to be people, right? And then you have to deliver a product, then you invoice for the product, and then you receive your cash. So when we're looking at the cash conversion cycle, we want to make sure that everything we do does not result in a longer time to earn our money. How many of you right now, I'm going to ask a poll question here. Here's a question that you should see on your screen. Take the time to answer. I want you to take the time to answer this. How many of you would consider your business loan ready? All right. Woof. So everyone is loan ready. So this is interesting to me. As I'm seeing these results come ticking through, as I was looking at businesses across the state of Vermont, and maybe I was looking at the wrong ones. It was only about 100 of them. When I was looking at the books weren't up to date. They weren't accurate. There was commingling of funds between the owner and the business, right? But everyone guaranteed me they were making a profit, right? They didn't have a cash flow statement. They really couldn't tell me when they were running out of cash. So I took the liberty of meeting with a bunch of, we can get rid of that poll, of a meeting with a bunch of bankers. And as I met with those bankers, I said, what do you think about these businesses coming to you? Are they ready? And we knew what we were talking about. We accurate how many books that we can trust. And the vast majority said, when people are coming in here for loans, we have to really look at those businesses to see if they're loan ready. There was a study done here, and the results that I just saw are telling, because that cash flow statement to me is key when we're thinking about getting loans and applying for loans. 68% of small businesses had they had no cash flow analysis done. They had no idea what their burn rate of money is, or if business shut down today, when they would run out of money. Apple, when Steve Jobs came back to Apple and took Apple over again, he made it a point of saying, we will build this business, and as we build the business, we're going to take the profits and we're going to, he didn't say hoard, but I'll say hoard the money, with the idea that we will be able to survive a downturn for 10 years. So his point was, we will never be a distressed business again and run out of cash and go through what Apple went through when Steve Jobs left the company. So we're going to use the cash conversion cycle. Here's an example of the cash conversion. This measures the amount of time it takes to convert a sale to cash. I'm going to come clean. As a consultant, I've seen very few people, when they go in to help a business, say, you know what, let's take a look at your cash conversion cycle. Let's figure out exactly where you need help. I've had, in the past 3, 4, 5 months, I've had people saying, Dan, hey, can you help me out here? I said, how are your books, right? Oh, I don't know. I had a company say, hey, Dan, we want to have a strategic planning session. We want to grow our business. How are your books? Oh, I don't know. I said, if you did this, if you put this one improvement in place, how would it affect your business? I'm not sure. So the cash conversion cycle is the sales process. How long does it take you to deliver a sale? Remember, you have sales guys out there. You're paying them money. You're doing advertising, right? Not every sales contact turns into a lead. And then you have this production process where you have to make or deliver the product. If you're a service industry, if you're a healthcare industry, you might say my operating beds are my inventory of products. So you're producing a product. Everyone is producing a product, even in the service industry. If you're a bookkeeper, it's your clients. What you're producing is a good set of books, right? You might have work in process in there. If you're an IT company, you're producing software and providing service, right? So that's your production. So think about your production process also as delivering service. You have an inventory process. So it costs you money to get in here. When you're in here looking at these raw materials and production process, you're generating expenses. You know, that money's being burned. You haven't even delivered it to the product. So you made a sale. Now you're creating the product or service. Sometimes it might go into inventory. If you're a manufacturer, inventory is easy, right? Inventory is the products we have and the raw materials that we have that we purchase to produce the product and move forward, right? If you're a service industry, your inventory can be people. So for instance, I was a consulting business, it would be people. If you're a doctor, if you're a healthcare organization, it's going to be people again. If you're a financial services organization, it's going to be people again that are delivering it. You have the product already built and you're moving it forward. Delivery is actually getting the product out to the client. And then here's the tricky part, the billing and payment. So the thing that I find interesting is most people, there's a different accounting methods out there, but the billing and payment is the interesting part to me, because once you deliver a product, you send an invoice. Some businesses might be cash or people are paying in advance, which is great for you, but you're sending an invoice out, and then it takes a certain period of time before you get reimbursed. So if you look at this whole process here, everything in red, you spent money, 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 you delivered a product and service, now you have to wait to get paid. This is where things start to get sticky, because now you've had a huge outlay of cash. When do I get paid, and how long is that actually going to take me to get paid? So that's what the manufacturing side looks like. I also have a slide in here that talks about, I tried breaking it out into the service industry, because we have a lot of service industries here in Vermont. You have sales, you deliver that sale or service, it gets delivered, and then you bill and pay. In the consulting world, for instance, you're paying your consultants, you're paying for travel, and then you might invoice every 2 weeks or every month. There's going to be a disputed invoice, and it may not come back to you. So I'm going to go back to the manufacturing slide here, and I'm going to share with you the stories that I've heard recently about, no, we're not going to go, we're going to go forward. We're going to go forward a slide here. In the chat window, if sales increased, what could possibly go wrong and where? Here you have a little picture of the cash conversion cycle on the top, right? You think a lot of people spent tons of money, CARES money, PPP money, developing websites, increasing sales, but in the window, chat window here, what possibly could go wrong and where? Now that you're looking at this cash conversion cycle, is this the holy grail, increasing sales? Don't be shy, folks. Yep, so far you don't have the capacity to meet demand, you have a disrupted supply chain. I'm going to wait for one more person, right? Right? The webinar is free. The price you pay to attend this webinar is you have to participate. All right, what do we have here? Disputed supply chain, customers don't pay, and so on. So let me tell you, I'm going to give you some examples. I saw some businesses that had excess capacity in their operations, and this was a beautiful thing for them, right? So I got, I hear about that. But here's what I've heard. I increased my sales. I spent money developing a website. It worked fabulously well. Kudos to the sales team. Kudos to the marketing firm. But I could not produce the product, right? I could not produce the product in a timely manner, right? So then, not only could I not produce the product in a timely manner, I've heard this more than 2 or 3 times, I got penalized for not producing that product in a timely manner and shipping it to and getting it to the customer. So number 1, I couldn't produce the product. When I produced the product, I didn't do it in a timely manner, and I actually ended up losing money. Then I had other persons say, yep, sales went up. We were able to produce the product, but guess what? The trucking situation here, we couldn't get it. We couldn't get the product out the door, so it took longer and it got more expensive to get the product out the door. I'm working with a pharmaceutical company. They're having that same problem. They're developing a vaccine. They have that vaccine ready to go. They can't ship it. Everything's going FedEx. It's gone through the roof, cut into their margins. Another business said, hey, we were able to get the product out the door, but guess what? Our customers, given the COVID situation, couldn't pay us, so we never validated those orders, and we don't understand. We generated the product, we incurred some extra costs, we padded it with margin, but guess what? We weren't able to actually receive payment on that, which put us in a terrible cash position. The next one, if production or service increases, what possibly can go wrong? So here's another example. I had a company call me, Dan, we were convinced to put this lean and Six Sigma are these ways of improving effectiveness and efficiency. I'm not going to talk about it, but we put in these programs, and guess what? It didn't work out well. What do you think happened there? The window's open. The price today is participation. If production, and what could possibly go wrong if production or your service throughput increases? That's the question there, right? A lot of people will spend money saying, hey, I'm going to improve my capacity. What's going on there? Not enough personnel to handle it. Quality goes down. Quality goes down. Exactly. So I saw a lot of what I've seen on the production side of the house as people call me is that, hey, we were able to increase production, but It took much longer than we thought it would take. We brought in consultants to help us, and it took, another pharma company that I'm dealing with said we had these consultants come in for 3 months. They were mapping out the process. It cost us all this money, all this money, all this money. At the end of the day, we had a marginal benefit. Our costs went up, but our cash went down. We weren't able to deliver enough product to make up for it. And then everything else, as we heard, the delivery of the product, especially getting in and out of Vermont, and again, the cash flow process. What happens? Another company called me, another couple. We brought in these consultants. They said one of the ways we can improve our working capital and cash is to decrease our inventory. We're not buying inventory. We're going to run lean and mean. What possibly could go wrong there? I'm reducing my inventory. I'm not spending a lot of money on stuff to be warehoused. A lot of people would think that's a great thing. A guy like me that's always focused on working capital, your cash flow and cash on hand, would say great, but what's the downturn of that? Delay in delivering, yep, because, so the whole 9 yards. This company in particular, one company I'm thinking about in particular, they ran out of raw materials to produce their product, resulting in delays, again, they had penalties associated with the product they delivered, and so on. And then, of course, we have what could possibly go wrong in billing and invoicing, right? So all these things, when you consider it as whole, you need to think about the ramifications on one another. It's not going to be instant pudding where I'm going to increase my sales and voila, all of a sudden I'm going to have all this cash on hand and we're going to be good to go. That's never the case. And even as a consultant, even when we're going in, and the people I worked with were sales, operations, finance people. We can go in there and look at the business as a whole. Many of the people, very few people that I've worked with in the past actually had that skill set. They were operationally focused. But when you start looking at the business as a whole, they're like, Dan, why are you worried about cash flow? We brought you in to take a look at our operations. Why are you worried about delivery? We had you come in and look at operations because I know there's a chain of events that happens here, and if your finances aren't straight and in order, we're going to have big problems down the line. So we're going to get into this session. Now, I encourage you, before we get into this next session, which is going to be, we're going to work together through the situation, there's a little form in the Files menu. There's a worksheet I created that you might want to print out if you're at your desk to take and use to jot down some answers. But these are going to be high-level questions on each part of the cash conversion cycle that we might want to improve. I encourage you to think about it. We're going to answer several questions. I have a very detailed plan when I look at a business, what I'm looking at when I'm looking at it holistically. If I'm looking at a business, if someone's bringing me for operations, guess what? I'm going to ask about the finances. If someone says, hey, we want you to take a look at the inventory part of the business, hey, guess what? I'm going to look at the billing and your ability to collect, right? Because I know that's always going to be the gotcha. So we're going to download that file. I'll give you a second to do so, and we're going to move into the actual workshop part of this, where we're going to start diagnosing each of these phases. So here's going to be our first question. You're going to say, Dan, I didn't see this. It wasn't in the cash conversion cycle. To me, this is a showstopper, right? As a consultant, I became so in making sure the finances are right because I knew my project wouldn't be successful 3-4 months down the line unless we had these things, unless we had the books right. So I want you to think about each of these questions and answer it. Are the books and financial statements accurate and up to date? A lot of people responded yes. I guarantee you, if Dan came in and had a look-see, I'd have a cow. So the first thing is you need to make sure, are my books and my financial statements up to date? Take a crack and answer that. Do I have a cash flow statement that I can trust, that's accurate. Remember, we just saw that 68% of small businesses didn't have a cash flow statement, if you will, that was accurate. Do I manage the cash flow system, my cash daily? Now, this has been problematic for a lot of businesses. I like to see a cash flow statement weekly, understand what it is weekly, if not daily. If you're a distressed business, you can't call the bank every morning and say, hello, this is ABC Widget Company. How much money do I have in the bank to pay my people or to pay my bills, right? We need to understand what's going to happen. This has never been more critical than now because of our current business climate driven by this COVID horror story. Do you know how long it takes you to get paid? When you send an invoice, how long does it take you to get paid? Some of us are lucky. You may have an online business, you take the payment online, and you're off to go. But many people invoice. Do you know how long it takes you to get that invoice? Write it down on a piece of paper. Right? This is going to be your way of understanding really what's going on. Do you know your margin by product or service? If I'm a hospital, do I know what my margin is by code, right? By diagnostic code. When I ran medical economics for Cigna Healthcare. We had a healthcare network. I had to know what everything was costing me. We had these capitated arrangements, which will mean fixed deals, but I had to know what things cost me. If you're a consultant, do you know your margin and your cost and your profit by consulting gig? If you're a restaurant, do you know your margin by meal or by food type? If you're some sort of manufacturer, do you know your margin by product? And can you get that out of your books? Again, I saw a lot of businesses, they could not do this, right? I said, what's the margin on this product? What's the margin on that product? Couldn't do it. Their books weren't set up appropriately. Do you analyze your accounts receivable? Not just analyze them. Do you understand what's driving those accounts receivable? Accounts receivable are invoices that you sent that haven't been paid yet. I had a company call me up when I worked for IBM Global Business Services out of DC, and they said, we need help. We have $50 million in accounts receivable. I said, okay. Over 365 days old. I was like, you're kidding me. You want me to help you fix and collect this? All they wanted to do was figure out how to collect it. But we sat down, I put a whole program in place. I said, I'm not just interested in collecting this. I'm interested in understanding why this happened. What was the root cause so we don't get here again? So we did a whole analysis around it. Does the business have a standard costing scheme? Do you know how to cost out your product? As a consultant, I would engage in products and put in projects, and I'd have to know the actual cost of everybody I brought on that project so I knew what my margin is. If I had someone from California on a team, a couple people there, I knew it was going to cost a lot more money. Workers come expensive, pays more expensive, benefits are more expensive. If I had a person from Europe on the project, I knew I had to pay for paid time off, all this extra fringe benefits that cost me. Do you know that? A lot of businesses I spoke to did not know that. Did not know what that actual cost was. Do you know your costs, and can you get those costs quickly for quoting purposes? Right? So I'm not sure what kind of industries we have on the phone here. If you're just, and this applies to everything. The medical industry, we call it revenue cycle management, and we know what our costs are there. I was the head of the process improvement department at the Medical College of Virginia. It was we have a restaurant. It's about a 920-bed hospital, fairly large hospital. And so I had to understand exactly what were the costs there, our operating rooms at capacity, what are we doing there to schedule these diagnostics better, and what were the costs of having those. In the restaurant business is an intriguing thing to me right now, because not only do you have the idea, and we have some folks apparently from the restaurant industry, what is the capacity? What is the capacity of our restaurant? and then what is it going to cost me to produce the product that I'm selling to that restaurant. The good news is you're going to get paid at the end of the day. The bad news is you're still incurring a fixed overhead cost for your building. You're incurring staff costs. You still have to buy raw materials, which are the ingredients that go into your product, right? I'm not sure what's going on with the cost there. And then you have the not the artificial constraint, but you have the constraint of capacity. Knowing these numbers is going to help you in the restaurant business understand, is it even worthwhile opening my doors? Or what's going to be my alternative to make a product and get that product to my customers? So here's one where the restaurant business, this person unfortunately went from almost a third of their capacity. So when you think about, I'm automatically thinking a third of your capacity, I'm thinking a third of your revenue, right? But your costs of doing business may not have gone down. So it becomes now, what is my average bill, and what's the average cost of delivering that meal? Can I stay in business at this capacity? There's some great capacity models. I have a simple tool that you could use. It could help you understand really what's going to be my break-even point on how I deliver these meals, and then figure out how can I use my kitchens differently. I heard a call recently where one restaurant had a hard time maintaining its lease. It went to the next restaurant over. It was in a restaurant area, and they actually shared the kitchen. Since both restaurants were down in capacity, they were able to share the kitchen and share the restaurant space and deliver takeout. So if you can answer these questions honestly and say, yes, I have a cash flow statement, I know when I'm going to run out of cash, great. I have my books, I can tell you my profit margin by product like that, great. I know I can quote, I call it the fully loaded cost of an FTE. Construction, I think they call it the burden rate. How do I price my product so I can be successful and make a margin? That's another tricky part, getting down to that cost accounting details. In the restaurant, the person that's in the restaurant industry, you really have to understand those costs to make a call. Am I open up Monday, Wednesday, Friday? What days can I have the highest volume? If I have a staffing issue, what can I actually produce at that staffing level? Again, in that COVID presentation that I created about how to survive it, how to improve your odds, I talk about capacity in there and understanding realistically, given the COVID situation, employees, how many employees can I expect to have in the building? With those employees, how many products, services, meals can I prepare, and how can I deliver? That's going to be the constraint in which you deal with. There's a second component to this. So I'm looking at this all from a finance part of it, and it's trying to understand, can I generate profit, and will this negatively affect my profit as I go forward? Every process, if you want to have a business stabilized and standardized, you need to have appropriate documentation and checklists. This here, on this slide, we repeat in every single slide. This is critically important if you want to have a business where you're delivering a constant, consistent service that will satisfy your customers. Is my process, do I have a process mission statement? Does my sales team really know what it is they're doing? Does my sales team, is there a flow chart? Is there a flow chart that says, here is how my process works? Is it mapped out? If you don't have a flow chart, we're having problems bringing on new people and training new people, right? So particularly in the situation we're in COVID, where people can't come back and forth, where we might be short-staffed, or we might have to bring new people on, we have to have a process that's mapped out. Every process, not just your financial process, your sales process, every process needs to be mapped out. Do I have measures in there? Do I know how I'm performing? We need to get over this idea that if I put a measurement system in place, or if I measure things, people are going to get beat up with it. Measurement systems are to help you make better decisions and to help your staff and yourself understand what needs to be done. How do I monitor it? I was at another company just recently. Dan, we did all this great stuff. We put all these measures in place, but guess what? We can't get the measures out of the system. And so therefore, to get the measures, it would be extremely difficult. And I said, well, then how do you manage it if you don't have the measures? It became ad hoc. I worked with another state in the Midwest. The legislative body put in these measures that need to be reported to them. The measures were never captured. 5 people had to be hired to gather measures that were somewhere through the state, bring it all together, and it was actually inactionable. So you have to make sure when we put these measurement systems in place that we can monitor them, we can use them to manage people or manage our processes, right? And that we know we use it to move our process or make improvements. This is consistent in every type of business. Now, I told you I'm going to have my Jerry Maguire moment for you here, right? We all think in stuff that we don't say. Now, as a Lean Six Sigma, as an operations guy, we love to sell Lean Six Sigma implementations, put in the system, meet with management teams, and the whole 9 yards. It takes too long, and we did a study at IBM. Over 5,000 executives, we said, how well is your Lean Six Sigma, we broke it out, Lean Six Sigma programs. It's all about efficiency and effective. How well do you think they're operating? Which ones think they got the biggest bang for the buck? 90% of them said it hasn't worked out for them. If you do these 6 things, create a mission statement for your process, map out the process and share it with your people so they know it, put good measures in place. If you're a service industry, I can give you 6 measures tomorrow that you can start using, right? If you're a manufacturer, you know what to do. Monitoring, how do I monitor that? How do I get real-time reports? How do I manage to it? And how do I make improvements to it to make sure I'm doing the right improvements? How do I make the process faster? How do I reduce the chance of making mistakes? And how do I reduce those costs? These are all things that should exist today, which don't exist in many of the organizations that I've looked at. So this is the financial overview. This is just the financial overview. Now we're going to talk about, take a second now and just think about what we discussed. Jot down some notes for yourself. Let me look at the clock here real quick. We're looking good. If you have any questions, I don't want to open the mics now. Maybe you should see who you are. All right, you can turn your camera on. If you go to the top, you can share your screen. But drop it in the chat window if you have any questions or comments. I'm just going to finish up with this one saying this needs to be your number one thing you're looking at. If you're looking at bringing in consultants or external help, you need to have your financial system and your accounting system in order. And I can tell you, as a consultant, I worked with thousands of consultants from many different companies. I worked for big groups, small groups. Rarely did we take the time to think holistically about a business and say, hey, let me help you. That's why I was so excited when I met Chris and Greg. I said, let's just be honest about this and put something in place that Vermont businesses can use that's affordable, do it yourself, that they can move forward with. I'm going to move on to the sales cycle. I already told you, we already went through the exercise. I liked asking the question up front of what could possibly go wrong. And we call that the Cobra effect. The Cobra effect is a term that was came out of India. When the British occupied India, the British folks did not like cobras. They had cobras. Cobras wasn't something that, they appreciated. So they put a bounty out there. They said for every cobra you bring us, we're going to give you X dollars, right? So, and that was one way of getting the cobra population down. They were trying to get rid of that cobra population. Well, the Indians in India, being productive, smart people that they are, they started breeding cobras, and they were bringing the cobras in and getting paid for raising cobras, right? So there was that unintended consequence, right? So it didn't do what they expected them to do. Then the Brits said, you know what, we're not going to pay for cobras anymore. And the Indians said, fine, right? Since we're not going to get paid for farming cobras, we'll release them into the wild. It made the problem 10 times worse. So we have this term that we use frequently in consulting. It's called the cobra effect. It's that unintended consequence. So in your sales process, are the benefits of the product clearly explained, right? This gets back to sales 101. Do we know what the benefit of our product is and how we're getting and what it does for us? It does for your customer, not for us. Is the sales literature targeting the right markets, right? So are we getting this to the right market, and how do we know we're getting it to the right market? There's a lot of great digital marketing going on out there. I tell you, personally, I have been really struggling to find someone really good in marketing that can really slice my customer list apart, tell me who's in it, tell me the demographics I'm using for, tell me they're clicking through. So this really is buyer beware. You need to figure out who's going to do this for you. Is the business making use of its price list? Do you have good price lists? Do you have transparency into those price lists? Can we quote appropriately? Remember I was talking earlier about having and understanding your fully loaded cost of an FTE or your product. You need to make sure we understand that. Does your business have a coherent advertising strategy and message? Right? Do we have a good message? Right? Do we understand what's going on in that message? And you'll know it's a good message. Now it's even easier than ever with all the digital. I say it's easier than ever. Everyone claims it's easier than ever, but I've talked with a lot of digital marketing folks, and I think it's easy to put ads out there on the web and things like that, but someone who can really take that data and tear it apart for you and tell you where to hone in on is more challenging. Does your business consider the buyer's business in competition and strategy? In that COVID presentation I created, I said, do you understand what your customers really need from you? And can they take delivery of that shipment, and can you get paid for that shipment? That's the things we need to be careful of as we're delivering our products and services. Does the business have sufficient information on costs? Again, this comes back to the books, right? You need to figure out how you're going to get your books in order and make sure that you understand the margin per product. I saw too many small businesses that aren't keeping their books. They're keeping them sloppily. They don't have it in there by product, SKU, or service. You need to really ensure you understand what that is, because the first thing that's going to happen, if you get into a position where you're really distressed, you're going to have to cut those low margin products and stop selling those. I had a business call me, said, Dan, business is up, but our costs are up with it. And what they were doing is they had a campaign on. They were selling a product that had very, very low margin and more risk than a high margin product. And I'm like, well, you need to get rid of that low margin product or not produce it at all, because you're barely breaking even on it. It doesn't matter. If you're breaking even on the product, you're squandering that opportunity. So here are some questions to ask yourself. If you can't answer these questions, you need to think about, hey, this might be an opportunity for me if you have the capacity to produce the product and service, if you can deliver that product and service, if you can get paid for that service. Again, the next slide is, are those process measured, mapped? Do you have a mission statement? Do you have the process mapped? Do you have measures? Can you monitor that process? Do I have a dashboard? Can I manage that process using that dashboard? And do I know what improvements need to be made to that process? I'll hit you hard on this every time, and this is key to making sure your business can grow. Any questions on this? Because we're going to go right into this next production slide, but first I'm going to give you an opportunity to put the questions in the window, if you will. We'll move on as soon as I two questions. The price you pay. So someone wanted to know if there's a quick hack for determining your product profitability. The profitability is dependent on your industry, and there's an organization called ASQC. I'm drawing a blank on its name, and it has profitability by product. So, for instance, in the grocery industry, the product your overall margin is really low. In the consulting business, we're looking at 35 to 40% product margin. It's different in each type of business where you can go to look for that. So I just put a poll question out there. This is great. So we have businesses that had upturn, right? So again, that upturn, whenever I see that upturn, I think it's great. We're using our capacity. But in that upturn, are we actually getting paid, or are receivables growing, and so on? So that upturn is fantastic. I love to hear that. But Dan will come in and say, all right, let's look at the financials and see if we're getting paid for that product, right? Some people said they've had no change. I'm glad to hear that, right? With everything that's going on, and then some people unfortunately have had a downturn. So again, if you had an upturn, keep an eye on your product and make sure that your cash is coming in. I'm going to share with you a story, and it's particularly relevant now. A lot of businesses made a pivot during this COVID situation, decided to pivot to a different service, if you will, to keep their capacity open. The same thing happened during World War II. Chevy, GM, all the car manufacturers actually shifted services. So when they shifted those services, what happened is that when the war ended, they were no longer producing cars. They ran out of new products, and all of a sudden, they had to start up their assembly lines, and it ended up costing them a lot of money to get back in gear, get back to their core business model. So now we're going to talk about the production cycle here, right? So are there large accumulations of material between operations and workstations? So do you have, if you're a manufacturer, or even the folk here in the restaurant industry, do you have a lot of accumulation between your process of what's going on and within that process? Because that's consuming money. If you have a lot of workstations and you're building up accumulation, there's an opportunity to decrease that accumulation. Because remember, we're producing a product, we're not getting paid for it yet unless you're able to finagle a pay in advance or a deposit up front. You're incurring expenses, right? We're burning through cash because we're not going to get paid until we deliver that product, right? Is the business able to reconfigure? Can you reconfigure your production or your assembly line quickly, right? So can you change from the low margin product? Can you make a shift to the high margin product or something along those lines? Are you maintaining your equipment? One of the things I saw as I was out looking at businesses is that the businesses were not maintaining their equipment well. So I would look at the business and I was like, holy cow, this is an interesting business. However, I haven't bought new equipment in years. All this equipment is band-aided together. What's going to go on here, right? There's going to be a cost associated with this. Do you have built up systems to deal with those breakdowns, right? Right now, you can't afford to have too many stoppages because you don't know when you're going to work again, right? So you need to make and ship while you can, make, ship, and get paid while you can, because you never know what's going to happen. If COVID cases increase another 20% this week, we're in for a tough haul as businesses as a whole. Have you tried to reduce the complexity of your process? Have you reduced excess waste? There's all sorts of terms in here you can use in your production environment, but the two biggest things are, can I produce the product at the volume that I need to? Knowing that you're going to have potentially people shortages, right? You're not going to have all the staff on hand. Do I know how many staff do I have on hand? Do I know my raw materials? If I'm in the restaurant business, do I know I can get the raw materials that I need, the fruits, the vegetables, the bread? Can I get that? So can I, not only do I have the people, can I get the raw materials? Can I pay for those raw materials? Again, I come back to the cash flow problem. Can I get it? Can I produce it? And can I get it outdoor? And can I get paid? So you need to ensure that you're covering all those bases. How do I staff? What's my capacity? Where are my raw materials? Am I going to have to pay higher for raw materials? Can I get those raw materials? Can I produce that product? Can I deliver the product? Can I get paid for that product? We need to be really honed in, and that is every part of the businesses that we're actually looking at. That's the production side. The person in the restaurant business or the service business, what does this mean to you? Can you type something in there? Yeah, so so I'm not sure if everyone can see what's in that chat window, but we have a person from the restaurant industry, and essentially he's living, it's essentially a day-to-day, getting the number of servers, getting the chefs, working the lines, right? There's no clean answer to what do we do for the hospitality business. If you look at the SBA survey, and I can send that document along to you, from the SBA survey in the state of Vermont, the largest employer in Vermont is the hospitality business, hotel, restaurants, and things like that. So the situation we're seeing in the restaurant business and in the hospitality industry is really dire with everything that's taking place right now. And again, do we have our processes appropriately documented? The inventory area, inventory comes in. When we're talking about inventory, it's having those raw materials that we need. If you're a restaurant, it's the stuff that you need to prepare food. If you're a consulting business, it's just the people that we provide. If you're a manufacturer, it could be the raw materials. And coming into this with the COVID situation, do you really understand what the delays are, and can you get the product or inventory that you need, right? If I'm making grilled cheese sandwiches and I can't get cheese, or the cheese has gone through the roof, what do I do in that situation? Moreover, since there's so much risk in the whole process, are my costs in line, as well as how long can I get what I need? What are the costs, and do I have to pay in advance for that? Are people requiring more money up front for the product? Has my lines of credit been diminished? Is the business working on development? Are you improving your vendor relationships? This is key to understand how can we work together? I'd love to buy what you have. I can't pay that price right now. What kind of partnerships do we establish to move forward on this? And do you understand and have controls around how you're purchasing product, keeping the product, and managing that product as well? So there's a list of things in here that you need to keep, that you should answer and be prepared to address as you move forward. And remember, every dollar in inventory is a dollar you've taken out of your pocket already. Again, we're going to come down to every process needs to have mission, map, measure, monitor, manage, and move those improvements. The delivery cycle is very similar. I've heard more than once, I'd say more than a dozen times here in the state of Vermont, getting product in and out of the state is very difficult. It was difficult before the COVID situation, where we had that shortage of truck drivers and trucks bringing product in and out. It's even worse now, since the trucks I have a lot of friends in the transportation industry from a consulting firm I worked with. Truck drivers are only going to destinations where they can get a full truck in and a full truck out. So I expect to see, as things go forward, transportation, getting product in and out of the state might be more difficult because, or it's going to get very expensive. You're going to have to rely on different transportation costs. So do you have a good product? Do you have a good relationship with your trucking company to get things here and get things out? Do you keep those accurate records of what went and what came back, right? What you're getting back? Are your managers aware of your freight forwarders, right? Do you understand what's going on there? Are your customers complaining about the timeliness, the accuracy, or the cost of your services? Right? We know that the transportation costs have gone up. I was talking about that medical device company, two of them actually, out in California I was dealing with. They tried to absorb the shipping costs, but they couldn't after a while, and they had to renegotiate their prices. The shipping costs are higher, right? Can you get it? Do you have to? You just need to figure out what you're going to do about getting the product in and out. So this might be, and more than a handful of companies, I'm reflecting on the number of companies I was dealing with, getting the product, getting raw materials in, and getting their product out has become a very big challenge for them. Again, I need you to answer these questions. So we have a person here that's that has gone. They said they ordered a product as they need them, and they're using the minimum from their supplier. That's great, right? So you're getting that product, you're ordering it in minimum quantities as you need it, as you hope you're going to use them, and that creates a situation where you're keeping your cash flow and what you have tied up in inventory, really low, and that you're getting that product in and out. So I'm not going. We're running out of time, right? But this here is the same exact slide. This is so important. I've listed it here several times. Do I have a mission statement? Is my process map, measure, monitor? Can I manage it? And do I have improvements to put in place? This is the huge one, the billing and the payment cycle. This is where everyone, I say everyone, not everyone, but this is where people fall on their face. And this is where, sadly, like Jerry Maguire moment, right? As operations consultants and things like that, we typically, the organizations never really looked at this. It wasn't really until I started working with private equity companies that I fully sit down and say, what are the full ramifications of what am I doing? Am I making improvements in areas where it's going to put the company in a cash situation where they don't want to be? Because typically they're saying, hey, we need to increase our profitability, and we're bringing you in to help us do so, make these operational improvements. I tell you, finding someone that understands that whole cash conversion cycle, someone who can manage that whole cash conversion cycle, it's finding someone that can help you prioritize improvements along that cash conversion cycle is a tricky nut. There's a lot of people out there with specialties in certain areas, and as I said earlier, they're going to recommend their area of improvement. There's two private equity groups here in the state of Vermont that I've talked to regularly, and they said that's become the biggest issue for them, is finding people who can come in that they can rely on to help them really articulate and help businesses understand their cash conversion cycle, but this more importantly. So do we understand our billing terms? Do we know when we expect to get paid? Are the billing terms on our invoices so people know and it's obvious when we need to get paid? Are the terms understood by the client? I worked for a very big company, and we had an enormous amount. Our account receivable stays were huge. Our rejected invoices, when we sent an invoice, those invoices were denied, were huge. It was because we had not sat down with the client and said, here's what this invoice says, here's what this means, here's why you're getting charged for this. So you need to be sure that you can make those improvements. Just by sitting down and making those things clear and talking to the people that receive payments, we were able to increase our cash flow $6 million a month. So but that's a bigger company. But if you make sure these things are clear, you're going to be way ahead of the game. Do you assess late penalty, late payment fees? Do you invoice daily, weekly, or other? Right? Often we'll wait to the end of the month to invoice. Peeps, I'm surprised at how horrible people are at invoicing. What percentage of your invoices contain errors? And are you analyzing those errors to ensure they don't happen again, or are you just generating a new invoice? What percentage of your invoices are rejected or denied? Remember, I just gave you an example of I lived through that nightmare of seeing that happen over and over again. You need to sit down and say, not only do I fix the invoice, but why was it paid late? Why was it rejected or denied? This is a huge opportunity for you to find improvements upstream to your process. Remember, I gave you the example of the company that had $50 million in AR, accounts receivable greater than 365 days. We were able to diagnose and find about 4 key things that were leading to those late payments or those payments being denied. And it significantly had an impact on their bottom line. On average, do you know how long it takes for your invoice to get paid? I asked that question up front. Do we really know how long it takes us to get paid? Because remember, an invoice is nothing more than a promise to pay. And do you know not only how long, but how much you have in receivables outstanding? I want to create a poll. All right, I'm going to say, I'm going to create a poll here real quick. How many people, get ready to answer this question. How many people know how much money they have outstanding? Is outstanding. Give me is outstanding. Is outstanding. Here's a poll question for you. How many of you know exactly how much money you have outstanding? 4? Everybody who answered? I find that difficult to believe, but that's the skeptic in me. Well, if you know exactly how much money is outstanding, good for you. Oftentimes, people have an inkling of how much they have outstanding, and fewer even understand how long it actually takes them to get paid. Are you getting paid in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Remember, different people pay different terms, right? So having worked with the government took a lot longer to get paid the company than in other industries. So take the time. If you can answer yes to all these things, you get a gold star. I guarantee if I came in and started asking questions and snooping and digging around, I'd come up with a different, we might come up to a different conclusion. Again, we're talking about the same thing about processes and map measure. So I want to do a quick recap here. So the cash conversion cycle talks about how not only is it gives us an ability to diagnose the bigger parts of our process. We didn't touch on HR, right? HR is a tremendous function. I'm not downplaying it right now. That's an overhead cost. We know it's there. Hiring people, finding talent, managing careers is important. What we were focusing on here was our ability to generate cash and diagnosing that business, because I think that's where we are. I understand that our unemployment rate's low, still kind of low actually, right? I was reading a study in Europe. It's at 9%, which is the best it's ever been actually. But it helps us understand where we need to look and what improvements we have to make at our business. It looks at how long it's going to take us to get paid, but also when we put those operational improvements in there, what those unintended consequences of those improvements we put in place. I just spoke about a lot of unintended consequences that my phone, I get calls every day, companies that we did this and here's what happened. We did this and here's what happened. We did this and here's what happened. Right? The longer your cash conversion cycle, the longer it's going to take you to get cash to put back into your business. Now, there's a mathematical equation. on how to calculate your cash conversion cycle. You may not know it off the top of your head. And you said, Dan, this is nice theoretically, but there's actually, using your books, if you have good books, they're up to date, we can actually calculate easily for you what your cash conversion cycle is and use that as a target going forward, right? It's not uncommon for business owners to make strategic decisions without knowing the implications of cash. We're going to make these operational improvements, but you may or may not know what the implications are actually going to be on cash. So I encourage you to think more broadly about your business. If you think you need to increase sales, can you produce the product? Can you deliver the product? Can you get paid for that product, right? Very critical. If you're going to improve your production areas and those areas where you deliver services, and this is where I'm seeing the biggest problems. Oh, we did all this work to improve our capacity here. We did nothing to reduce how long it takes us to invoice. As a matter of fact, we're shipping the wrong product more quickly. Those invoices are getting denied in return, and we're killing our cash conversion cycle. If I were you, and I don't know your business, the first thing I would do is look at my books, look at my finances. If they don't look good, my books don't look good. If I don't know the margin by product, if I'm not on top of my AR, if I don't understand my cash flow, I'd go find your accountant or your bookkeeper, make good with them, because you need that going forward. Again, this is the conversion cycle. Every strategic improvement affects a downstream process somewhere, operationally and financially, right? You need to make sure you can generate these profits, understand what's going on with your business. My pain goes out to the hospitality industry. I traveled maybe 200 nights a year in the past, living in hotels, on planes, eating in restaurants, and I know how critical they are to the industry, and I know how slight dips and tips can really affect their industry, especially with this COVID situation. But you need to think strategically about what it is you're doing and not be roped into doing one thing that has implications across the board. And remember this, 82% of businesses fail because of cash flow problems, even those that are growing quickly. I love watching those companies grow quickly and then run out of cash, right? Because it happens. You can turn on your mics. And we'll open it up to asking questions and having a conversation here. Turn on your camera if you'd like to do so. I hate being on camera, but we're doing so. So let's open it up and have a conversation about what it is that, was there an aha moment? What are you going to do differently? What did you learn? What did you take away from it?
And Dan, if this is Chris from UVM again, if we can also put out there what is it that you still need to know, and what are your chief concerns? Because one of the things that we want to be able to provide is our links to other resources, right? There's Restore Vermont, among others. We'll hear a few minutes from the Continuing Distance Ed and what they've got opportunities. But it would be good to know where people are seeing their critical points of concern going forward.
That's great. So we just discovered some key aspects of your business, not all aspects. What help do you need next? What did you get? What did you take away? What would be the next step for you? And then we'll be able to provide you, we'll provide some guidance of where you can turn to for some from next steps or help there. Turn on your mics, folks, your cameras, let's hear it. Or chat in the window.
Dan, I have a question.
Sure.
So there's a lot of information here. And if you're looking at the whole company, what would you suggest you look at first? Would you take your industry type? And I'm just learning, what would be the best way to prioritize? If
The
you're
first
like
thing,
production, inventory, it's just a lot of material.
the first thing, the finances. Are my books accurate and complete? Many people said they are. I struggle to believe that, given the industry trends and the analysis, and just from where I've been. Your books, the first thing we need to know is stop the bleeding. Think about cash and your books as your ventilator, right? We're in a COVID situation, as morbid as it sounds. If we don't understand clearly what we have in our books and we don't understand our profit by margin, we could be producing product that's unprofitable, that no one can pay for. So the first thing is, let's clean up our books, and then I work backwards upstream, which products are selling well, which ones aren't selling well, and then make a decision on there. Because we have to remember, everyone's producing a product. The person in the restaurant business needs cooks, needs waiters, and so on. If you're in the manufacturing business, if you're making windows, you need product, you need people. So, but the first thing is get those books in order, because we are going to go into another a period potentially where we're going to have more restrictions on us. Otherwise, you're not going to know. If you don't know your books, you're going to be producing product that may not have any margin, that you may not get paid for. That's my whole.
Can you define clean books for me?
Yep. Clean books means they're classed appropriately. I know by SKU or product what my margin is, right? Mm-hmm. I know how many of that product I sold. I know who got that product, and that they're up to date. So my books are to the point. I call it loan ready. Can we go out to an investor group or a bank and get a loan on it? If your book is full of journal entries that mask for accounting errors, that doesn't do me any good, because we need to really figure out what the margin is by product.
Okay, thanks.
Let's see, there was a question here. Let's hear someone's voice. Maybe everyone dropped off. So we're gonna.
Yeah,
we're
so
gonna.
we saw.
No more. Okay.
Yeah, we still have 10. We still have a number of people still on, Dan. I don't know where the chat box went on my screen. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yep.
It might be useful to have people go around and, or at least in the chat box, help recognize maybe a takeaway for you and what you may feel like you need for next steps.
Sure. We'll just go through the list. I can see some names. There's Abby's got her mic. I heard Abby. What do you have there, Abby? What's the takeaway for you, and what do you think? Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I run a catering company, and we have a big contract. So we are actually very busy, although it's one client. So it's a question of if that continues. I guess a question I have is advice for how much cash reserves makes sense, or are there rules of thumb? How much cash reserves does it make sense to try for as a goal, like in terms of months of operating budget, for example?
Absolutely. So I would, there's some really good books out there on business turnarounds. And as a rule of thumb, we use at the beginning 1 month. So if sales were to cease today, can I at least have enough money to carry me forward for a month while I'm looking for new business? And a lot of businesses, that's a struggle, but you need to aim for that 1 month and then get it to 6 months.
Thank you.
How about Danette? I know you can't use your mic or camera. Give us some typed pearls here. It's your opportunity to put poetry down. There's a microphone app at the top.
Yeah, I don't think not
You-
everyone
you
has.
said you
Not everyone's computer apparently may have them.
okay.
We have Hervé and Mediha and Sarah. We have someone from the hair shop. Just to call out folks that, just to recognize that you're here. So the slides, Dan, they're asking if the slides are available.
Yes, I believe it's one of the, yeah, we'll make the slides available. If they signed up, we can email them the slides. That's not a problem at all.
Here's Hervé.
Yep.
Hervé, do you have a question? Oh, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I think for the restaurant business, I think it's a little bit of it's a moving target every day these days.
Yes.
We up to last week was a disaster. We dropped off the cliff. We've done in 1 week 50 covers, if that. When the week before we did 150. I have a cook who left about a month ago now. Didn't replace him. Will not replace him at this point. So it's my sous chef and I in the kitchen. It worked. Like I said, it worked. It's not perfect, but it works. We managed October very well. We, believe it or not, cleared a profit in October, which I didn't think I would. But for now, we have this reserve. So the reserve is mostly made of the money. I had some reserve before I started, and I had to lose $5,000 in March at the beginning. And now that reserve, compared to that reserve I had at the beginning, I have about 3 times as much now. The summer has been decently good, so whatever money we got, EIDL, PPP, grant, have all been pushed aside. I think I can survive probably another 3-4 months if I keep the business I do now. I think as far as I look at November, we are about 50 to 60% down compared to last year for the full month. Next Saturday, so next week will be closed as usual for Thanksgiving for the whole week. But I think for now, for 4 or 5 months, I feel pretty comfortable. If it keeps on going the way it is now, the 4 to 5 months kind of projection I have probably will not fly. I think we can reduce it to 2 to 3 months.
Have you, so you mentioned the PPP and CARES. There's still a lot of questions and ambiguity out there about the tax implications of that. So I think many business owners on the line need to get with their accountants and tax professionals and things like that to think about what is their tax liability going to be, what's that going to look like coming this new year, and how do we reserve to pay that, right? So one of the things I talked about in the financial services, on the financial slide, is having the revenue to pay your taxes and pay yourself a fair wage. So
Yeah, no,
I appreciate
this part. I think I heard about it yesterday on DPR. They were starting to talk about it, or NPR, and that's not something I thought about at this point. I mean, I got some cash aside, and I think if I need to, that's what I'm going to use. But yes, it's probably going to be another burden that we're going to have to carry eventually.
Yes, that's something to consider as you start thinking about your cash on hand and your cash flow. Congratulations to you for being able to stick it out, right? But
No, thank you. Thank you very much. It's not easy, but we keep it fun, so it's all good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Sarah asked for copies of the presentation and the materials, and yes, we'll be sure to get that out to you.
Yeah.
All right. So we are running up against time, Dan. If there's any parting thoughts before we turn it over to Greg Dunkling to give a little overview of some other offerings that we have to share.
So this has been today's session was the culmination of many things that I felt strongly about over the past year and a half, and trying to figure out how do we give back to Vermont and do something for businesses relying on, the vast majority of our employers are small businesses, and I kept struggling with this idea of who can I get to partner up with to put together something, a plan. I was grateful to find Chris and Greg to say, what can we do? Take the government out of the picture, take everything out of the pictures to help each other as, provide this expertise that we have so that businesses can take care of, can get, move ahead and go forward in the right direction without without getting all the bias and stuff out of the way, right? I love operations and things like that, but sometimes that's not the right answer, right? Finance, we need to make sure we got that right. Maybe your operations are tight enough where you can generate cash, but the whole reason for this seminar was to provide you a different perspective, a broader view for you to consider to hopefully grow your business and make sure you can make it through this whole situation. Having said that, I'm going to turn it off over to you, Greg and Chris.